This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Hey Jason, it's Sarah. Today I got a quote for a garage door repair. The property manager said I needed a new motor and quoted me $672. So of course I asked for a couple additional quotes. And that technician found that a sensor was disconnected and my $672 repair went down to $0. So don't take the first quote that you get. Always get a second opinion.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 2159-2159, and today we are talking with Property Radar, formerly Foreclosure Radar. I guess that is a sign that the market has shifted to a lot less foreclosure business, right? Well, we've been talking about that a lot on past episodes, but today we've got a fascinating discussion for you, so we will get to that in just a moment. But first, I wanted to remind everybody to make sure you save the date every single month. But definitely for this upcoming meeting, we have a free Zoom meeting, and this is not a webinar. It is a nice interactive Zoom meeting, so you can get your questions answered and participate in the meeting. And it is with none other than Tom Wheelwright, the Rich Dad author, the author of 2 books, including the very famous Tax-Free Wealth book. Tom is back with us. He's been on the show many times. I've been on his show many times, and he will be doing a live interactive webinar with us on the second Wednesday of the month. These are always the second Wednesday of the month, and you can always register every month over and over at jasonhartman.com/Wednesday. Isn't that easy? jasonhartman.com/Wednesday. Go register to join us for a free Zoom meeting with Tom Wheelwright. These last about 90 minutes, and you'll be able to get all of your questions answered. It's the second Wednesday of every month. jasonhartman.com/Wednesday. Let's get to our discussion with Sean O'Toole with Property Radar. I'm currently in Arizona, where they have these driverless Waymo cars running around. I downloaded the app. I can't wait to get in one of them. I'm going to do it today. Now,
awesome.
Hopefully I'll still be alive tomorrow.
The odds are good.
Yeah, and they're cheaper than Uber. And they're cheaper than Lyft because they have no driver, right? And so they're really quite cheap. Like I last night, I was on my phone, I was looking at their app, and I was looking at some routes, and I was thinking, mostly when I go to a city now, I don't bother to rent a car anymore. It's just too much hassle to wait in line and rent a car. I just take on-demand services around, and I find that it's much easier, much cheaper, and it's just really a better way to go. When I turned 16, I couldn't wait to get my driver's license. I mean, that was like,
for
a Gen Xer, that was the first thing I'm going to do. I want to be able to take girls out on dates. I want a car. I want the freedom of a car. Now, I didn't own a car. I used my mom's car, but I still could drive it, right? And now they don't even care if they get their license. It's like they're waiting until they're 21.
Friends' kids are 18 and they don't have their license yet. I'm like,
it's a different world. That's the point. And so you're right about the credit card debt. And the same thing is true about the housing inventory levels. Because you know what those don't adjust for is the population. And so if we go with like Mike's estimate and most
lower
estimate of 1.2 million homes for sale at any given time being the normal level of inventory, well, that was true 8-10 years ago, when the population was lower than it is today. So you've got to really adjust that like you adjust a chart of credit card debt for inflation.
It needs to be higher. Yeah. It needs to have grown. And, we've got a huge problem here in California with, just NIMBYism, and, the state's trying to tackle that, and the cities are fighting back, and, it's kind of a crazy thing. But the bottom line is we're not building enough inventory. And, while the state's trying to change some of the zoning laws and force some things on cities, at the same time, they're passing all these crazy laws, that just keep the cost of building going up and up and up. I built a home a while back, and the foundation had to survive both a 100-year flood and a 100-year earthquake at the same time, right? And the foundation cost was more than like a single family home cost would have been in Texas, right? It was ridiculous.
Yep.
And in downtown Truckee, and most of these buildings down here were built in the 1800s. They're more than 100 years old,
right?
And they're all still standing.
Yeah.
And they work just fine. And so we've really made new affordable housing illegal
I love it. I love it. That's exactly, hey folks, that is a quote from Sean O'Toole. We have made new affordable housing illegal. I'm so glad you said that. That is absolutely true. And Sean, that's another misnomer about prices. When you look at price history of housing, they're not adjusting for square footage usually. In 1970, the typical home was 1,500 square feet. Today, it's 2,300 square feet. Just ever so recently, the builders started shrinking their homes to try and meet buyer demand at the lower end of the market. So that is reversing a bit. But
a little bit of that, and then also a lot of the 2-bedroom homes for 55 plus communities is the other thing that's shifting that down a little bit. But you think it shifted up even with all the 55 home communities being built that are only 2 bedrooms. And it was still shifting up with that. So, which is crazy because, there were houses in my hometown, the little dingbat houses, we call them. They were 900 square feet, 3 bedrooms. That product doesn't exist anymore, but that used to be the affordable housing. And now that 50-year-old housing is the affordable housing, and nothing new is affordable.
Okay. Yeah. So, what I was going to say is the quality of construction of those new homes, like my house that I recently sold in Florida. I mean, I never lived in a house like that, Sean. It was built like a tank. I couldn't believe the sturdiness of that house. I mean, the houses I had in California were built out of paper mache, but the Florida house, I mean, because of the hurricane standards, you can't build an affordable house anymore. That's the point. Yeah.
So the building codes, they're good. They've just made affordable housing illegal. Like, and they have their benefits, right? They're great. They're better for the environment. They're more likely to withstand, whatever, flood, fire, hurricanes, et cetera. But, it's just not affordable. And, most of that affordable housing that used to be legal to build is still standing. And it's been 50 years. So was that really such a bad thing to build?
Yeah,
this is better.
Couldn't agree more. And, Sean, they've done the same thing with cars, right? You've seen a lot of reports over the past couple of years, the end of the $20,000 car, right? And cars are much more technologically based than real estate, right? So you'd think that the price declines in automobiles would be very significant because they're basically tech items, to a large extent.
And computers and TVs and everything else has declined.
Right. But now the cars with all the safety standards, I mean, of course we've got now, I remember when I bought my first car that had an airbag. And I remember talking to the salesman about how much that one airbag in the steering wheel cost. And, it was like, at the time, it was like $3,000. And we had this whole conversation about how that made the car so much more expensive. And he said, look, your insurance company views the airbag as a lower cost than the cost of fixing your face, right, when you have an accident. And fair enough. But now we've got surround airbags in these cars and a million safety features and a million safety systems. So it's not the same car. It's not the same house either.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
And,
all right.
And the houses that we're building today are better. There's no question.
Yeah.
Cost a lot more. And it's removed that entry-level product that, here in California is hurting our people who want to be teachers and firefighters and, the service.
And even with the laws that they made about accessory dwelling units or ADUs, that's not really helping because those are so darn expensive to build.
It's still very expensive to build.
Yeah. So, Sean, I want to switch gears before we wrap it up and have you talk, and I know you've got a couple of graphics to share that are interesting, about something that most people wouldn't see and they wouldn't be privy to. It's kind of what happens behind the scenes in the real estate market with this whole cottage group of real estate wheeler dealers called wholesalers. Okay. Yeah. most of my listeners know what wholesalers are. And these are people that get a property under contract and then they resell the contract and assign it to somebody else. But they're acting differently than they used to. And that is an indicator as to what's going on in the real estate market. Not everybody's watching this on video, but what does this graphic tell us about what's going on in the real estate market?
So my company, we track data on every property and every transaction in the US. And we used to be mostly used for due diligence and mostly used by foreclosure investors. But more and more people are using us to do lead gen, to go find deals. So wholesalers use us a lot to go find the deals that they do. And a lot of our investors, though, would just buy deals from wholesalers, right? Because they were interested in doing the fix and flip and making the property nice and the rest. So I'm going to break down here an example of what kind of a traditional deal looks like. A wholesaler goes out and buys a house, gets a house under contract, I should say, for $200,000, right? They take $20K, add to that, and they find an investor to buy it for $220K. That investor goes through, and between commissions and repairs and the rest, they end up, putting $50K into the property. They make $30K. So the wholesaler, for just finding the lead and handing that lead off, they never even necessarily take title to the property, make 40% of the total money made on the deal. And the investor, who takes all the risks, puts out their cash, does all the repairs, takes the market risk over time, and all the rest, makes 60%, right? And this is kind of the way things have worked for quite a while. And if you're an investor, it's like, really, why aren't you going and getting the deal yourself, right? Now, the other side that's happening is that it's getting so hard to find the deals that the wholesalers that are finding the deals are going, wait a second, why am I only taking 20K? They still don't want to take on the risk. They still don't want to do the work, but they're finding instead they can relist these properties as is on the MLS, something called wholetailing. They can now make 60% or more and just flip it directly to an owner that wants to buy a fixer. And there's enough of that happening in the market that we're seeing a pretty big shift here, where investors that used to rely on wholesalers can no longer rely on wholesalers to find deals, because those wholesalers are selling to that end consumer directly. And the wholesalers are making more money on their deals. And that's forcing these investors to go out and do lead generation and find their own deals, which has been great for us as a business.
And so you're sort of calling the investor the fix and flipper, the person who's doing a remodel and improving the property and then keeping it as a buy and hold rental, right?
They may keep it in this example, right? They're selling it and they just do a fix and flip and they're selling. But also, if you're doing the buy and hold, you're now going to pay a greater premium to that wholesaler for finding the deal than if you go out and find the deal yourself. It's still hard to find deals, but it's becoming more and more worthwhile if your goal is to do buy and hold or to do fix and flips, is to go find that deal yourself rather than rely on a wholesaler. And for the wholesalers, though, it's good news because they're making more money selling the deals that they find directly to consumers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So what does this tell us about the market, though, Sean? Most people listening or watching aren't wholesalers. They're buy and hold investors. They just want to buy usually a rent-ready property, rent it out, hold it, and create wealth over time.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Like, why is this happening?
I mean, the bottom line issue is just the lack of inventory, right? It's given the wholesalers this new channel where they can wholesale out to the market rather than have to go through an investor and get it cleaned up and ready for market. So it's given them a new option, and it's a sign of the lack of inventory in the market.
Yeah, so just the lack of inventory. This is a symptom of that, in the way people are acting in the background. Yeah, interesting.
But it's causing pretty big shifts in the investor world, but both for the rehab and for the fix and flip folks.
Yeah,
really shifts in relationships and how the whole market works.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Anything else you want to share with us? Anything I didn't ask you that you want to make sure our listeners and viewers know?
Yeah, I think the big one that I get asked a lot, and in fact, I'm working with a reporter right now on some increases in foreclosures in like Houston and certain parts of Florida and other things. I think there's still a lot of concern out there about foreclosures. I was on 60 Minutes explaining the foreclosure crisis to Steve Croft back in 2008. So that's kind of what I'm most known for.
That's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And the regulatory changes plus the amount of equity in the market, we'll continue to see foreclosures. There will continue to be people that don't make their payments and lose their house in that way. But we're not going to see a downturn in price and anything like we saw in 2008. So anytime you see a crash bro telling that story, you can just wholesale dismiss it. There's no data to support that. There's not the regulatory framework to support that. They're just misinformed, and I think that one for sure of all the crash bro stories is the most ludicrous.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I like to say someday they will be right. Of course, there are always cycles. Of course, there will be crashes and booms, but when these comfortable people have either no mortgage at all or they have 27 years left on their mortgage, it's not coming anytime soon. This crash you're waiting for, folks. So don't hold your breath, right?
But I guess the balance to that is in 2016, I ran around giving a presentation basically saying why things were going to be fairly calm, kind of for the foreseeable future until the next black swan. And I had a slide that had all the different black swans on it, right? And one of them happened to be a pandemic, and that turned out to be the next thing. But there's lots of black swans. AI is a black swan. I mean, people don't realize that yet, just like the internet was a black swan. It will kill certain things and benefit other things. And it's going to cause change in the market. I don't think it's one that's going to harm real estate prices, but we do live, I would say, largely in a crisis cycle economy where we move from one crisis to the next. And what I thought would happen in the slideshow I gave in 2016 is that in the next crisis, we would do a good job with reflation, because that's kind of what we do as a country, or what most countries now do, right? Is you do a combination of stimulus and other things.
So you said the word you used was reflation, right?
Reflation.
Got it. Okay.
Right. And so after 2020, we took kind of the steps we took after past crisis. We did a little faster, a little more aggressively, so the downturn wouldn't be as long. And we kind of did the right steps, except we missed the fact that we killed supply by sending everybody home. And that combination, we ended up not just reflating the economy, but then resulting in inflation. So that was a pretty big misstep. Yeah. And you could say, oh, we put too much money into the economy. I think it's equal to say we sent too many people home, and we should have found a way to keep supply up.
Good point.
But we missed the mark on that one. So that's the big question. When we have the next crisis, whatever it is, I expect we'll see low interest rates again. I think in my lifetime, I will see interest rates in the ones.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'll see interest rates in the ones with 40-year fixed financing in the United States as a way to get us out of some black swan.
Right.
Because that's the way we deal with crisis. We lower interest rates and we put stimulus in. And
Sean,
that will be the next thing.
Another brilliant thing you shared. I don't know about the 1%, if for 40 years, if that's going to happen. I hope it does. But can you imagine prices will go through the roof if that happens? That'll be insane. Now, it will peel off some sellers, but they're just going to rebuy and buy as much as they possibly can because they've got massive amounts of equity, right? So, and their equity will skyrocket. But what's so interesting about what you said, although you didn't completely say it, and I want to finish the thought for you, is that we all have to understand. I mean, look, Ken McElroy, he's a friend and business partner of mine, right? We all know Ken McElroy, been on the show many times. During COVID, when COVID started, he was making dire predictions about the end of the world. He said, in fact, one of his videos, he said, this year is over, write it off, forget it. Don't touch, don't do anything, right? And later he admitted why he called that wrong. And he said to me, he said, I didn't count on what the government and the central bank would do, right? And what we have to realize is that we live in a centrally planned economy. Now, look, as a free market guy, I hate that. Okay, but we have what we have. It is what it is,
and it's not just us; it's most advanced
of the world, of course, almost virtually all of the world.
Yes.
Okay, when they say, well, there's a G7 meeting, a G20 meeting, whatever, all they're meeting about is how to print money. That's what the meeting is always about. Yeah, there are some flavors of it, but essentially it's increase the money supply to prevent the crisis and reflate. And that's the thing. You always have to count on, look, the central planners have a vested interest it's aligned with you if you own real estate and you use mortgages, especially on that real estate, because they're going to reflate and they're going to loosen the money supply, loosen the credit supply. That's always the response to whatever crisis of the du jour we have. And yeah, it's really good that you pointed that out.
It's because we have no fiscal policy too in the US. It makes it even worse, right?
Yeah.
So if we had a functioning Congress, there are other things we could do that would work better. But we leave all of this on the back of the Fed. So it's these very crude levers that they pull, and they create these asset inflations as a result. And of course, we got inflation this last time too, which is really unfortunate. But it is. There's the lack of function in Congress. It makes this even more likely to happen next time at maybe even greater scale.
It's like when you run out of energy, 1 cup of coffee will help, 2 cups of coffee will help more, but there's a diminishing return. And that means they just have to print more and more and more each time. And so it makes the problem worse and worse, or better and better, depending on what side you're on.
We've been doing this since 2000, right? So we learned a little bit after 2000. We did it again in 2008, and then to 2020, and it will be what we do with some modifications. Now, the one thing that I will say is that I don't know that the Fed will do it as aggressively if inflation's still high. And, a lot of people feel the Fed went the wrong way with pushing rates up as high as they did to try to break inflation. Yep. Right now, it's looking like maybe they didn't do enough. And I know that sounds terrible right now, but would we rather have a short period of pain followed by a long period of calm than, not having done enough and continuing to have inflation be a problem? So we'll see how that all plays out. But
it's easy to be an armchair quarterback, and I'm saying this for myself. Yeah. But they should have raised rates much sooner and much more slowly. That would have been the recipe. I mean, Powell kept sticking with his transitory narrative for way too long, but when it wasn't transitory anymore. So, that was their mistake. Sean, great talk with you. Love having you on. We got to do this more often. Give out your website and tell people where they can learn more about you and your company.
Yeah, propertyradar.com is definitely the place to start. I'm also on, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all of those normal places, and usually pretty easy to find. It's usually like /Sean O'Toole, but you'll find me no problem.
Good stuff. Sean O'Toole, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
The following is a blog post found on jasonhartman.com/blog.
Analyzing the nitty-gritty differences selling land versus selling a home. Yielding real estate is in most cases a long and complicated process, and ensures appropriate means of selling both land or a building depend very much on each one of them. Though both deal with the land, there are major mismatches between selling land and selling houses. In this paper, we are going to see the difference between these two styles to show you clearly and fully how special they are. 1. Nature of the asset. Land. The primary objective of selling land refers to the sale of a piece of land, which has no buildings or any improvements at all. At the end of the day, it is the natural resource that is being exploited, which allows development to happen. Home. The act of selling a home includes selling not only the land on which the house is located, but also all elements of the house itself, such as vestibule and landscape. The list can be endless. 2. Market dynamics. Land. While the land market can be more volatile and speculative as compared to the home market, it nevertheless is a more stable asset. Considerations like location, zoning laws, and prospects for improvement have a wide-ranging impact on the price list of land. Home. The nature of the market of houses tends to be more stable, and home prices are a derivative of the features of a particular area, such as location, size, condition, and amenities. While the financial component of house buying is essential, emotional factors also contribute in a significant way in decisions for a house purchase. 3. Legal and regulatory considerations. Land. When land is sold, it is often never easy from the legal as well as the regulatory perspective, as it involves zoning laws, environmental regulations, and land use restrictions. Due diligence becomes an important factor to check on compliance and reduce risks. Home. The process of selling a house is a legal framework that includes disclosure of defects on the property, adherence to building codes, and transfer of ownership title free of any encumbrances. House appraisals and inspections are common in the home buying process. 4. Marketing and presentation. Land in marketing out lots differs from marketing homes in terms of marketing strategy. The prime factor in drawing attention to the land is its ability to be developed in the residential, commercial, agricultural, or recreational sector. Potential customers consider aspects including proximity, elevations, and utilities in their purchase choices. Home marketing highlights the attributes and the benefits a property offers to make it desirable to various buyers. This is where real estate agents conduct professional photography, virtual tours, staging, and open houses to show the property's importance. 5. Financing and investment. Land. The process of financing the purchasing of land is more complicated than that of arranging financing for a house. Lending may be viewed as more risky because the land is not as profitable in terms of an investment and it has speculative property. Therefore, mortgage loans as collateral may be limited. Buyers who face these constraints may need other forms of financing, such as mortgage for the land and cash purchase. Home financing options have become more diverse and more accessible, with many mortgage products that best fit different financial situations. Mortgage lenders treat a home as a safer piece of property that can be used to support borrowers who are striving to become homeowners. In sum, selling land and houses comes with exclusive challenges and factors to be taken into account during the selling process, with the parties concerned being buyers and sellers. It is imperative to have a deep knowledge that has an understanding of these differences to make an effective decision and a successful trade. But there are always two sides to the coin. Selling or buying lands are not exceptions at all. Whether selling land or selling a home, the following should be taken into consideration: researching, planning, and getting professional expertise are the key success factors to maximize the value and minimize the risks.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.